Hey everybody, it's me Ashish, and before we begin, I just want to give a quick thank you to everybody listening, watching, and supporting the podcast. It means the world to us, and we're so appreciative. I just want to let you guys know that you guys can always ask us questions, give us segment ideas, and keep up with the fun, all at AshishandFriends.com. We're on Twitter at AshishandPals, we're on Instagram at AshishandFriends, and hey, we're even on Facebook, facebook.com/AshishandFriendsPod. If you're watching this video, please go ahead and give it a like and subscribe to the channel. All that following and liking and subscribing will help us grow and keep going, so we appreciate it so much. And once again, thank you, and I hope you enjoy the episode. Yes. Welcome to another great episode of the Ashish and Friends podcast. With the NFL season on the horizon, we thought it would be a great time to discuss both conferences and kind of dissect what we think about what's going to happen in each division. As always, I'm your host, me on Instagram and on Twitter at Ashish Airy. And I'm joined by my longtime friends and co-hosts. We've got Shahan at Shahan Jayaraja. We've got Dev at Superlaser. And we've got Ryan. So we all looked up our divisions. We're going to have a great conversation and probably power rank them 1 through 4. So why don't we start with the NFC South? Probably the most exciting division and the one with probably the most changes. Ryan, let us know what's happening in the NFC South.
So the NFC South. So the biggest upcoming team is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They added Tom Brady and Gronkowski and Shaden McCoy on their offense. It already has Mike Evans, Godwin, O.J. Howard, and Cameron Braid, with a great head coach, Bruce Arians. So I think that's the one that we're all excited to see. And then we got the Saints, which is pretty much the same old. They added Emmanuel Sanders, which I think is a huge benefit to the offense, because they did have a few other receivers, but they're up-and-coming receivers, and Sanders has definitely proven. It's been to Super Bowls. And then they also added Malcolm Jenkins, the safety with Philadelphia, which would definitely help replacing Eli Apple, I believe. And then also another center from the drafts. So that should help bolster the offensive line. Then there's the Carolina Panthers, which I think is going to be very interesting because they're such a young team with Teddy Bridgewater, Christian McCaffrey, and then they got DJ Moore, and they got Curtis Samuel, and they added Robbie Anderson, added a Kong defensive line. So that's going to be interesting. And then they added Shahan's favorite coach, Matt Rule from Baylor, as their coach, and lost Ron Rivera. So I'm kind of interested because that seems like a nice young team. And then last week you got the Atlanta Falcons, who added Todd Gurley and then some defensive players. So having said all that, I think it's going to be close between the Saints and Buccaneers. I think it's going to come down to the final matchup, or the two head-to-heads, to decide that. But if I was going to choose a team at this point, I think I would choose the Saints, just because I know what they've done in the past, and the fact that they still have the same head coach, the same quarterback, potentially the same running backs and everything. I have to go with the consistency. But I think the Buccaneers have a good shot of being number 1. But I'm going to put them number 2. Now I'm going to put the Falcons in number 3. But I wouldn't be surprised if they take a number 2 and number 1, because they had a great end of last year. And they still got Julio Jones and Matt Ryan, and now got Todd Gurley and Hayden Hurst, which is your favorite tight end, Ashish.
Right.
And then I put Carolina Panthers just because that's a work in progress. I think they have the weapons. They got Teddy Bridgewater. I forgot to mention that. But I think that's just a work in progress. So one Saints, 2 Bucks, 3 Falcons, 4 Panthers.
I think you kind of nailed the power rankings, Ryan. To me, when I look at the division, I see New Orleans and Tampa as those two that are really going to be duking it out to win. And I also agree, I just don't know what we're going to get in Tampa. So I'm more comfortable putting the Saints first. And then, the Falcons are that kind of wild card team in the division. I think that, the Falcons have really struggled since they lost the Super Bowl. They just haven't been the same team. But they still have all the potential. And Todd Gurley, who knows? Maybe he's in for a bounce back year. And then with the Panthers, I'm not the biggest Bridgewater fan myself, but we will see. I think there's certainly a work in progress. And One thing to talk about with the Panthers that I think is interesting, they did something that I really wish more NFL teams would do. When you bring in a head coach, they gave him a real long-term contract. No player is on there wondering who's the man in charge. Everyone knows, look, they're going to part with this player before they part with the coach. He's on like a 7-year deal, right? I really love that because it really lets the coach get in there and actually coach.
Yeah, I think for me, I think that Ryan has the order right. I think that New Orleans is just in a different place right now than everybody else. Tampa can get there, but look, I mean, it's not like we saw the best of Tom Brady last season. I don't think this idea that he's going to step in and suddenly change everything there, like, I just don't think that that's based on anything. They have a lot of talent there, but, like, they had a lot of talent there last year, too. And I don't think that, for me, I understand obviously the things that Tom Brady does really well, even at this point in his career. But like Jameis threw for 5,000 yards last year, right? Like there were a lot of issues and he turned the ball over too much, all this sort of stuff. But like quarterback production wasn't why they didn't win, right? They have other flaws too. So I will be interested to see if they can get to that conversation. But like Dev said, that top two I think is on a different planet than everybody else. Third, yeah, Atlanta. They're still trying to win. And look, here's the thing I'll say about Carolina, right? Obviously, as people mentioned, I have some familiarity with Matt Rule. One thing that people might want to remember as they go into this season, as you know, they go in with expectations of 6 or 7 wins. His first year at Baylor, they went 1-11. His first year at Temple, they went 2-10. Right? Eventually, they built up to going and winning all these games, but like it just doesn't happen right away. That's not how he functions. He's a tear it down from the top and then rebuild it back up kind of coach. And that's why you see guys like Luke Kuechly leaving. That's why you see guys like Cam Newton leaving. This is very much a long-term process. Now, the team is talented enough that they're not going to win 1 or 2 games, but this is very much a process for them, which is his favorite phrase, by the way, is the process. So I do think that New Orleans is, to me, the overwhelming favorite. I am excited to see what Carolina can do long-term, not next year.
Right. Not too much to talk about the Carolina Panthers. I think you hit it on the spot. No one's expecting anything out of them this year, right? It's just like a whole rebuild. Let's see what Teddy Bridgewater brings to the team. Can he stay healthy? Can he throw down the field? They gave him some weapons just to test it out. So let's see what happens there. So yeah, I think they're set for number 4. I don't think that's a question here. We'll go to the number 3 seed, and I think that's going to be the Falcons. I have them at 9-7. I think they're a great offense. I'm excited to see their offense. See Calvin Ridley probably break out. They brought in Hayden Hurst since Austin Hooper left. And Hayden Hurst, even though he hasn't been like that great in the NFL, the Ravens did take him before Mark Andrews with a first-round pick. The Falcons traded a second-round pick to get him. So I'm excited to see kind of what he brings to the offense as well. And let's see what Gurley brings in. I mean, I think you can be at least as good as Devontae Freeman, right? I mean, let's just see if he can stay on the field. But the issue with the Falcons is they were the number 2 seed last year. So that means they get to play the Cowboys and the Seahawks, which are the two divisional teams they're playing. Whereas the Bucks, who were a horrible team last year, get to play New York Giants and the Rams, right? So there is like that 2-game difference where you're like, okay, I think, the Bucks definitely get that benefit. But yeah, I think one thing also a lot of people don't notice is that their defense has changed. Their defensive line's pretty good, but they've lost Desmond Trufant. They've lost Vic Beasley. So, I mean, those are things to keep an eyes on. So I totally agree with Ryan. I think he nailed it on the spot. I thought maybe he'd go with the Bucks first because some people feel that way, but I think the Bucks are going to end up here second. Obviously, you brought in Brady. Let's see what he brings, right? Like Shahan mentioned, even though Jameis Winston had his flaws and threw 30 interceptions, he also threw down the field quite well, right? And that's why you see all the production from Mike Evans and Godwin. So I want to see where Godwin lands up, actually, because I think Evans can go and catch the ball wherever it goes, right? Whereas Godwin, I think you need to be a little bit more spot on. But I've heard good things during camp, so I'm feeling positive about this. My questions are, does O.J. Howard finally get his shining moment? Bruce Arians has not really, shown him too much. We've seen a lot more Brate. Now they brought in Gronk. So I'm wondering where O.J. Howard is in the mix of this. And I think you just have to put Breeze and the Saints at number 1. Does Breeze hold up the whole season? That's one thing to keep an eye out for. But like Ryan mentioned, they brought in Emmanuel Sanders, a great slot receiver for the team. They brought back Malcolm Jenkins. And I think the defense is really great. They have depth everywhere. You got Latavius Murray as a backup running back, Ty Montgomery. You got Jameis. You got Taysom Hill. I mean, like, actually, if you look through the roster, even on defense, they're quite stacked, and they have lots of depth too.
Hence why they're in cap hell right now, because they're paying everyone because they have
a lot of
everywhere.
good players.
Yeah.
And the thing is, right, like if I'm the Saints right now, like, I understand that maybe you don't have the money to pay Alvin Kamara, but like, dude, this is like a push your chips in year anyway, right?
Yeah,
like this is
they'll find a way.
this is I don't know whether Drew Brees is going to be good after this. I don't know who the starting quarterback's going to be, because God help us if it's freaking I can't even remember his name, Taysom Hill, right? You know, like this is definitely this is all in year, and there might be some long-term consequences. They might not be able to pay some guys that they want to pay. They might have to cut guys that they want to pay, but like, dude, just go for it. You know why? Don't waste your time kind of worrying about all this stuff. Just go for it.
To me, this is a double down, all in year because they brought in Jameis. Look, they said, like, if Brees gets hurt, we still want to win a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Right? That's why they brought in Jameis, and I think that's the way they need to go. If they don't, you know, at least make an NFC Championship game a Super Bowl this year, that's a bad year for them.
For sure. Like, I think their intentions to make a deep playoff run. Yeah. And like Sean mentioned, go all in, right? Like, you don't know how many years you have left of Brees. I mean, if something happens to him, you got Jameis Winston on a 1-year deal as like a minimum contract. I mean, yeah, I don't know about that. And, you know, I'm excited to see Marcus Hunt over there. He got signed by the Saints. You might not know him, but he used to play rugby. He went to SMU for a year and played defensive end. This guy's like just a monster on the field. He's not that great in production, but I really like that player. So let's go from the South to the North. And Dev, take it away.
Yeah. I'll just go through a little quickly. The first team you have here is the Green Bay Packers. I think everyone knows what to expect from the Packers in the sense that, like, look, they've got Aaron Rodgers, they've got a pretty decent roster. They're going into the second year with their head coach. You see a lot of times when you get into that second year, you expect an increase in production. You're going to expect the offense to work a little bit better. So, to me, the Green Bay Packers are like a 9-10 win team, and they're probably the favorite to win the division. Then you've got the Chicago Bears. Look, the Bears have been a train wreck recently, and they had a good year there 2 years ago, and Trubisky really did play well, but I think that Nagy really kind of relied on a lot of like trickery and foolery to make Trubisky a better player. The question is, like, are they going to go with Foles? I think they're probably a better team if they do go with Foles, especially because Nagy has shown, like, granted, he had like some huge, horrible coaching moments last year, but he's shown he can be a good offensive coach, and I really do expect them to be in that eight-ish win category if they go with Foles. Then you've got the Minnesota Vikings. To me, this is the other favorite in the division. I probably put them right there with the Packers. They could be a 10-9 win team, and they're going to be vying. They have that insane defensive line. They've got just great all-around team. Kirk Cousins is coming back, and he really played well last year, and they extended him again. They're showing they trust him, and I think that's important when you're a quarterback. To have that trust from the organization. So I also have them at 10 wins. I don't know who will win the division because I didn't go through like the full sim if I picked all of the games. But one of those two would be to win the division. I'll just go with Green Bay as my default. And then the Lions are this kind of sleeper team where, look, a lot of people forget the Lions started out like on fire last year. And a lot of people forgot because of how quickly they completely collapsed. But you never know. Like, there's so much firepower on this team. Matt Stafford can really throw the ball. But I have them at 7 wins and 4th in the division.
I think the thing that's...
Where did you have the Bears at? How many wins, and are they third?
The Bears I have at 8, and they're third.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, I think the thing that's interesting about this division is that it's probably arguably the most balanced division in all of the NFL. Because, like you said, I mean, there probably isn't a Super Bowl contender in this group, but every team has potentially a chance to go to the playoffs, right? Like it wouldn't be outrageous for any of these teams to go to the playoffs, even if again they probably aren't a conference championship Super Bowl type team. Obviously, I'll start with the Bears for obvious reasons. I'm a Chicago Bears fan. Look, when you say that, actually, let me start that over. Okay, so Matt Nagy, right? Matt Nagy got a lot of criticism last year, obviously deserved. But I think that it was obvious how good a job he did coaching in his first year, right?
Because I agree.
Mitch Trubisky is I don't even know if he's a college quarterback, man. Like, much less an NFL quarterback. Like, it's a joke. It's a joke. He can't throw accurately enough at the NFL level. And that's one thing. Again, you give Larry Fedora at the college credit a lot of credit for being able to put him in good situations, but his arm was never that accurate. He didn't have a strong arm. He's very inconsistent throwing the ball. And for me, I look at Nick Foles, right? One thing that I said last year was, I feel like if the Bears had a replacement level quarterback under center, that it would solve a lot of their problems. Is just, being able to have a guy who what he's going to do. It might not always be good, but what he's going to do, right? And the other thing that I'll say with that too is that there's obviously been tons of jokes all offseason about how many tight ends the Bears have, right? But the hope is that, I think especially in Jimmy Graham and Cole Kmet, the rookie who they just drafted, they have two truly playable tight ends, right? And two truly playable receiving tight ends. And they'll be able to function more out of 12 personnel without shitting their pants, basically, right? So I do think that there's some upside with this team. Obviously, I don't think that they're going to necessarily win the division, but I think there's some upside there. Green Bay, you mentioned, I think that they showed a lot of growth in their first season, but we kind of got to wait and see what happens. I would probably have the Vikings as the favorites, I'd say. Not a huge favorite, but probably as the favorite. Again, all these teams are really close together. And look, I just can't buy into the Lions, man. I know that they showed some flashes for a little while, but like offensively, I just don't love what they've got going on. Isn't Kerryon Johnson hurt too?
So they drafted DeAndre Swift, who's been injured. Kerryon was in a brace. I mean, right now it looks like Kerryon's going to start and Swift is coming back, but like they're always banged up. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I just think that there's a lot of questions on that team, and defensively they haven't been as good as you thought that they should be for hiring Matt Patricia.
Right. I think this is I think if they don't make the playoffs this year, this is Matt Patricia's last year as a Lions head coach. I would find it hard, especially considering how many stories we've heard about players not liking him, that they're going to keep him around if he's just being mediocre, right? If he's a 10-win coach, I think you can get away with okay, players don't like him. Yeah, but we're winning games, right? But if you're losing games and players don't like you, you're out.
Right. For me, I just need to see growth, right? And again, you saw flashes of it for a little while last year, but I don't feel like anything's fundamentally changed. And the issue just becomes what is kind of the point of this Matthew Stafford thing, right? Matthew Stafford, he's been productive for all these years, but are you trying to win now with him? Because you can't be building with him at this point, right? He's starting to age out. I just don't know what exactly their timeline is, and that I think is one of their big issues.
I completely agree. In the current landscape, especially in the NBA and NFL, if you are not contending for a Super Bowl or trash, you're the worst possible option, right? You wanna be in that rebuild mode or actually contending. There's no the middle ground is the worst place to be.
And I think that there's reasonable ways for them to get to contention. Right? I think that there are moves that they could make to sell out a little bit of their future to try to put a contender around Stafford. But I feel like you have to make that decision at some point, and it feels like they just keep dragging their feet.
Okay, I have some hope for the Lions. Okay, they aren't my favorite to win the division, but I think they're going to win 8 games, I think. They added Jamie Collins, which is actually a really good linebacker, Reggie Ragland, Danny Shelton, Desmond Trufant. So they really boosted their defense. They got Vitae from the Eagles to boost their offensive line, which I think overall kind of dropped from last year. But they lost Darius Slay as well to the Philadelphia Eagles, but added Okuda in the draft. And I think that's a good replacement for sure. I'm interested to see if TJ Hawkinson can actually become what we thought he was, right? Obviously, last year he didn't play that much because he's injured. But if he can become like a good offensive weapon for Matthew Stafford, he obviously still has Marvin Jones and Kenny Galladay, who we've seen, who's probably like a top 12 receiver in the league. So I think they have enough parts. Let's see if Matt Patricia can actually put it together and come out with a good season. Now they do have Kerryon Johnson, always injured, but pretty good when he's healthy. And they added DeAndre Swift. So now they have like a great run game as well. But let's see if the team can. I think the team has upside. Let's see if they can live up to it. So I have them at third for me with 8 wins. For fourth, I do have the Bears. I think they're going to win about 7 games. I mean, 2 years ago, we saw the Bears defense be like stellar, phenomenal, right? Then last year, they kind of came back to earth. So let's see what they can do. They added Robert Quinn from the Cowboys, who led the team in sacks. I think that's going to be great with Mac on the other side. Like you mentioned, Nick Foles, obviously an upgrade over Mitch. And I think if you start with Mitch, they might potentially start with Mitch, right? Just for a game or two and see what happens. Because if Foles starts, I think Mitch is done. I don't think he's going to play the season unless Foles gets injured at that point.
I think that if Nagy were to start Mitch, then either 1, he needs to be fired, or 2, like, then things are way worse than we think.
Right. I mean, I'm just thinking because, I've heard during camp, like, there's not someone standing out between the two right now. So that's not great. But yeah, so they have a really nice front 7 on the defensive side. Their secondary could use some work, but I think it's pretty good. So let's see what the team does. When I looked at the division, I put what the hell's going on, right? Like each of these teams are kind of like in the middle. Some has a great defense, one has a better offense, but they're all in the middle and they all have a chance. So I wouldn't be surprised if they actually did something amazing. That's what Foles does with the teams, right? So at number 2, I've got the Minnesota Vikings. I think they're going to win 9 games. They lost Everson Griffin. They brought in Yannick Ngakoue. Like, what an upgrade on defense. This is another team that's in cap hell, though. So I'm interested to see what they do. They lost Stephon Diggs. They brought in Justin Jefferson. Maybe that's better for Kirk Cousins. Let's see. But yeah, obviously it's Mike Zimmer is coaching, so that defense is probably going to be really great. But let's see what happens on the offensive end and see if Dalvin Cook can stay healthy.
And every time that you say cap hell, I keep thinking that you're mispronouncing Capel.
No, but like they've had talks with their starting tackle saying if he doesn't take like a pay decrease, they might have to cut him. And so like that's how bad their situation is. I put the Packers first. I'm not very confident about this because when you look at their free agency and draft, they didn't do shit for Aaron Rodgers at all. They brought in Devin Funchess, but he opted out. So that's not even a weapon on their team. They've got starting like obviously Devontae Adams, great receiver, but like after that, you've got like Lazard, you've got MVS, you've got all these Equanimeous St. Brown, like who?
Dude, who? That kid's a beast, man. That kid's a beast. That kid,
but he hasn't shown it yet. Like he hasn't had the chance, right? It's like a bunch of names we don't know. Like Dev mentioned, it is his second year under Matt LaFleur, so let's see what the team can do. They have 3 good running backs. They've got Aaron Jones, Jamal Williams, and they drafted another running back. Why not bring AJ Dillon in, right? But the point is, their offensive line has probably been worse compared to the last few years. They lost Brian Bulaga, so let's see what really Aaron can do with the offense and see if they can actually like be a good team. Their defense, linebackers are great. Secondary is not that amazing. And their line's not that spectacular.
Well, for me, it's pretty similar to what everybody said, but I think actually the Lions are 4th for me. I can't see them going. I mean, I love Stafford. I think he's a great quarterback. Like you say, he's just in a situation that's not helping him at all. And I think they have all those injury issues, and defensively they're probably not as strong as the other teams. I like the Bears as the 3rd or even the 2nd, to be honest with you. I think their defense is stout. Adding Robert Quinn with Mac on that line, that is a force to be reckoned on. And I think Foles can make a big difference on that team. You got Allen Robinson, you got Taylor Gabriel, you got like 11 tight ends. So you sit there, and you got Anthony Miller. So I think he has the weapons to make the offense. When you got David Montgomery, Cohen, as you mentioned, Vikings. But I think that's dependent if Dalvin Cook stays healthy.
Right. Can you just repeat the Vikings part?
Yes. You mentioned that about Dalvin Cook. I think Vikings are 2 as long as Dalvin Cook stays healthy. I think it's dependent on that. I don't trust Kirk Cousins as much as maybe other people do. I think he's good, but just the past couple of years he's fallen apart when they need him the most, and especially losing Diggs, and now you just have Thielen, which is not bad, but as your only weapon, I feel like that makes it harder. And then
Look, Kirk Cousins is just the avatar. When the world needed him most, he disappeared. Just give him 100 years. He's going to come in and save everything.
Listen, but I think it is very important to mention that we are talking about the regular season when Kirk Cousins makes his damn money. We're not talking about the playoffs. We're not picking who's going to win the Super Bowl. You know what? In a Week 12 game against, the freaking Arizona Cardinals, that man's going to go off.
That's what he does.
Totally true. Let's go to the NFC East. I think they actually have the best schedule. You know why? They play the NFC North, which is the Ravens, Pittsburgh Steelers, and Bengals and Browns, whatever. But they also play the NFC West, the Rams, the Seahawks, the Niners. Like, holy shit. Like, this is going to be a fun-ass schedule. So, Shahan, take it away.
Yeah, so I'm going to go through it in reverse order of how I have them ranked. So in fourth, I don't think there's much surprise here. I have the Fighting Dan Snyders, the Washington football franchise. Look, this team is so lost versus the rest of teams that they don't even have a name right now. They don't have a mascot. They have a brand new coaching staff. They apparently have to hire like a bunch of new people in management because half their people working there harass women. Like, it's all bad, right? It's all bad, top to bottom. It's all bad. Now I will say, I think that if you need one guy, it's in terms of guys who are available, so take like a Belichick or something. But like, if you were to take one guy over the last couple of years who was available, who you would want leading something like this, I think Ron Rivera is the guy. I think that Ron Rivera is universally respected in this league. He's done a great job both offensively and defensively. He's built a strong culture. There's a reason that the Panthers kept around so long. I mean, this is a legit high-level coach, right? So this isn't, they didn't go Snyder and hire just like a third Gruden or something like that, right? Like they really committed and brought in Ron Rivera. So I think that, look, they're changing the name. Hopefully they fired a lot of people. There's a lot of scrutiny on the organization. I'm hopeful that this does end up being an inflection point for the Washington team, but it will not come in 2020. But anyway, the Redskins, the Washington football franchise, they are, I got to put something in the swear jar, but the Washington football franchise, I do think that better days are ahead, but the current days suck. Next up in third, we got the New York Football Giants. So the Giants did the Giantsiest thing that they could have ever done and decided to go hire a special teams coordinator and then bring in Jason Garrett. So cool, exciting stuff, I guess. Joe Judge is the new head coach of the New York Giants. Look, I think that there can be some value to bring in somebody who doesn't necessarily specialize in offense or defense. But how many of these Patriots assistants have worked out the way that we thought, right? Like, I just thought that there were some much more proven commodities out there. I thought that there were guys who, especially when you get a quarterback like Daniel Jones, I feel like the move is to try to bring in somebody who's going to embrace that and try to get the most out of him. Now, I do think Jason Garrett will be good for that, but again, it's just hard to tell what exactly this team is going to look like in 2020. So for me, they're clearly in third.
There was a report today about them doing a slip and slide as a fumble drill, and Joe Judge is in there doing the slip and slide with them. Clearly teaching Daniel Jones how not to fumble. This is great development for their quarterback.
This is the type of shit where everybody as soon as he does it in that moment, everybody's like, damn, this guy's a football guy, he's in there, and then they go 6-10, and it's like, wait, maybe we should have hired a football coach. But again, I do think that there is something to be said for guys who are special teams coordinators having attention to detail. We've obviously seen with John Harbaugh, it's really worked out, but it's a hell of a chance to take when you have a second-year quarterback. Moving on, in second place, I've got the Philadelphia Eagles. I think that, look, between the first and second place team, I think it's going to be very close. I think it's clearly going to come down to these two teams. For me, look, we can have a conversation about where Wentz ranks in the pecking order, and I do hopefully expect him to be healthy this year. They got a very good offensive line, and on top of that, not only will they have their receiving targets back, they also added some really good ones in Jalen Reagor and Marquise Goodwin. But they're still a team that I'm waiting to see exactly what to expect from them, right? Like they obviously had a crazy run to make it to the playoffs last year, and they can't do that twice, right? Like they have to just be good enough this year. And I think defensively they were pretty good. I think offensively, when Wentz is on the field, they're clearly a different team. They obviously added Darius Slay on top of that in the defensive backfield, which I think is a huge addition for them. But I just think that this team still has a lot of question marks. I still think it's always going to come down to, will Carson Wentz stay healthy? And the answer is probably no. The answer is probably no. We're already seeing that some of the receivers are getting hurt in camp too. I mean, who the hell knows at this point, right?
Even he's injured at this point right now.
Right.
So.
Right. So for me, look, I know that you guys, the three of you especially, are going to have a lot of thoughts about this team, so I'll keep it relatively brief. But I think the Dallas Cowboys will go into 2020 as the best team in the division. They finally dumped Jason Garrett and hired Mike McCarthy. Now, I do think personally, I don't think that it's like a huge coaching upgrade. But the thing that I'll say is that I think that Jason Garrett had gone stale. I think that he got complacent. I think that he didn't reassess things the way that he needed to. And I do think that Mike McCarthy will be a fresh set of eyes on things, right? We know what he can do in the pass game, and I think that adding CD Lamb's going to be a big deal for that. Though again, I mean we've talked about this offline before. That tight end position, I think, is very concerning to me. I think that for me, if they had a really good tight end, I feel like this could be like an elite offense, but they don't. In some ways, like I know that CD Lamb was just the guy there. I would have potentially looked for a bigger pass catcher instead of another sort of speedy route runner. But still, I think that they're going to be a really, really good offense. I am curious to see sort of full time now that you're transitioning from Travis Frederick. What's that interior line going to look like? The bookends are obviously really good. The interior is a little bit more of a question mark, and luckily I am much higher, I think, than some of you guys on Ezekiel Elliott. So I do think he'll be able to handle it. Well, especially than Ryan, obviously.
Yeah.
But defensively they do add Everson Griffin. But like you said, lost Robert Quinn, so it will be an upgrade. We'll see how much of an upgrade. Still a lot of question marks on that defense, right? Like, I mean, linebacker's a strong position for them. I think the defensive line is a lot better. That secondary, still a little bit of a moving target. Sounds like they're still trying to figure out. It sounds like they still might be moving some of their draft picks from corner to safety to try to fill some holes. And I don't know whether that's what you're looking for right now, on I guess September 1st at this point, to still be experimenting with different safeties. But look, I think that Dallas offensively has a chance to be really special. I think defensively in the front seven, they're really good. And if that secondary can catch up, I mean, look, I don't see them as like a legit Super Bowl contender, but I think they could be a really good team.
Yeah, so moving secondary pieces to unnatural positions is like a Cowboy special. They do it all the time. I think you nailed it, honestly. So one fun thing with the NFC East is that the same team has not won this division twice in a row, I think, since the second year the division has existed. So it's been years, and I don't expect that to change, right? Playing a first-place schedule is really freaking hard, especially in the NFC where there's so many stacked teams. I expect about a 10-win season from the Cowboys, 9 wins from the Eagles. I think the Eagles might be a playoff team, even with that 9 wins. Or maybe you might see an 11 or 10, but I think those are the two best teams in the division. And then the Giants, I don't know, like maybe 6 wins and maybe like 5 wins for the Washington football franchise, or 4. It'll be interesting to see Alex Smith come back. Like if Alex Smith ends up starting a game this year, what a crazy story that would be.
So for me, right, the biggest thing that I need to see from Washington is I need to know for certain whether Dwayne Haskins is the guy that you want to head forward with, right? Because I think that it's not going off on too much of a limb to say that the Redskins will have a top 3 pick next year, right? If not the number 1 pick. So you got to know, are you gonna give up on Dwayne Haskins? Are you gonna to draft his Ohio State contemporary Justin Fields? Are you gonna draft Trevor Lawrence? There's a couple other guys in this upcoming class I think could be special. So look, I think that the only thing you need to learn from this season is Dwayne Haskins an NFL quarterback?
Yeah. So with this division, you clearly see 2 teams that are like in contention for playoffs with Super Bowl dreams. And you see 2 that are like in the rebuilding phase. So just like Sean, I'll go with Washington fourth for sure. I think they're going to win about probably 4 to 5 games. You mentioned they might get the number 1 draft pick. I think the Jags are really trying really hard to get the number 1 pick, but yeah, they're definitely in the conversation for sure. I think their defensive line is scary as hell. They have Ryan Kerrigan, they have Montez Sweat, they have Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne, and Chase Young. Like, that line is scary as shit, and it's going to be that way for the coming years. And I think, they've added some parts on defense, and it's interesting to see. Of course, they have Riverboat Ron there, and his specialty is working with the defense. So I'm interested to see where that goes. Like you said, they do have Dwayne Haskins. Let's see if Alex Smith, what he does if he ever plays. But they have Scary Terry out there. What else do they have, though, right? I think they need to figure out the running back situation. AP is not the answer anymore. I think maybe like bringing in Bryce Love as a starter and then bringing Antonio Gibson more as a pass catcher in the backfield or something like that would be really great for them. But yeah, this is obviously a team that's rebuilding, so they're fourth for me. New York Giants, again, I think Daniel Jones is going to regress a little bit. He looked really fantastic last year. He needs to work on his fumbling. I think Garrett's actually a really good coach for him, because that's the one thing he always instills is like, do not turn the ball over. We might have a plain ass offense, but you're not going to turn over the ball. Okay. And maybe Joe Judge does a good job, but if he stinks for 2 years, Jason Garrett's going to blame Joe Judge and take the head coaching job himself. It's happened before.
I don't know whether Joe Judge, or Jason Garrett, I don't know whether he has that kind of cachet with the Giants ownership group to be able to say actually everything was fine except for the head coach, even though our offense is terrible and Daniel Jones sucks.
We've seen it before, and clearly he's a super likable guy that he gets like 3 extra years as a head coach for the Cowboys. So let's see what Daniel Jones can do. Obviously, Shepard's going to be healthy to start this season. Ingram's going to be healthy, and Barkley is going to be healthy. So hopefully they can stay that way. Let's see what they can do, but I don't think they're in contention for the top 2 seeds in the division. I think overall their defense is pretty decent. They obviously drafted Xavier McKinney, who got injured early in the second, but they added Logan Ryan, and they've added some parts, so let's see what happens. But I think they're another year away from contending. At number 2, I'm sorry, Dev, I do have the Philadelphia Eagles here.
Wait, I literally also have the Eagles at number 2.
I know, but we just keep going back and forth on Wentz. But the issue is, for like we said, it's the injury concerns. Not only with Wentz, though. Like, the receivers, Alshon Jeffrey, Deshaun, Jalen Reagor is already hurt. Like, these people are, like, injury-prone at this point, right? The other ones especially. Their offensive line, which has been, like, probably top 3 in the past few years, they've already lost 2 starters. And, so that's another thing that I want to see where that goes. So I think probably the tight end, Ertz, and Dallas Goedert will probably get more passes this year because of that situation. But that's why I have them number 2. They're also playing the Packers, and let me look right here. Yeah, they're playing the Packers and the Saints versus the Falcons and Vikings for the Cowboys. So I think that 1-2 game difference makes it. Well,
and it also hurts when you waste your second round pick.
I mean, that's actually the reason why Jalen Reagor got injured. It's because Hurts threw an interception and Reagor went to stop the defensive guy. I'm like, that's just a stupid thing. But I obviously they got Darius Slay, great player. Their defense overall is like okay-ish. It's pretty good. But let's see what happens. I have them at 9 wins, and at number 1 I have the Dallas Cowboys with 10 wins. Obviously they lost Byron Jones, who was like a shutdown corner last year. They lost Travis Frederick. Both were captains on the team. So I think, let's see who steps up on the defense as a captain besides Sean Lee. They lost Randall Cobb. They lost Jay Witt. And they obviously lost Robert Quinn, who led them in sacks. They've done their best job to try to fill in those holes. They added CeeDee Lamb, upgrade over Cobb, in my opinion, especially in the long term. Let's see what happens. Shahan has concerns about their tight ends. I think Blake Jarwin's going to have a great year, but the question is behind him. If he gets injured, then it is a huge issue because Dalton Schultz cannot catch, and Blake Bell, I mean, he hasn't done much. So let's see what happens there.
Belldozer.
Yeah, but like Sean hit it on the head. Their linebackers, phenomenal. You got Jalen Smith, you got Sean Lee as a backup, and you've got Van Der Esch. They just need to be healthy and play like they did 2 years ago compared to last year where they weren't as good. Secondary, big question. Cornerbacks, I think they're going to progress as the year goes. They're very young. But safety is a huge issue and kind of a concern for me. But the defensive line, you add Everson Griffin, you add Alden Smith, you bring in quite a few names we've got here. Yeah. So I think overall we're going to see a great team, and I think it's going to be one of the most exciting offenses to watch. So I've got them with 10 wins in the number one seed. One other thing that I have is their offensive line. Like you mentioned, Frederick left. They put Joe Looney back in there. Their tackles don't stay healthy. Tyron Smith is probably going to miss a few games, right? And that kind of that changes up the whole game, and they don't really have that much depth. So I'm interested to see what happens there. I'm looking forward to Pollard being used more. I think he can catch the ball really well and be a great substitute for Zeke on a couple plays. And they do have Andy Dalton as a backup now, so I feel at least comfortable in case something did happen to Dak. But Ryan, what do you think about the NFC East?
You have my prediction in the same order. I think the Redskins just have a lot to watch out for.
The Washington football team.
Sorry, the Washington football team. Please
expletive right here.
Yeah. Washington football team have a lot to watch this season. Haskins is at the quarterback. Also, I think they got a stud running back in Gibson who's going to take over that running game with AD. But AD might have a couple good games left in him. I wouldn't count him out. And then Bryce Love is also a stud from Stanford. I know Shahan knows about him. I think he was a Heisman Trophy candidate or winner. I can't remember. But nevertheless. And then Giants are 2. But you know what? I think Daniel Jones picks it up. That offense has a lot of weapons. With Saquon Barkley, with Evan Ingram, with Shepard. So, but I don't think this year. I think in a couple years they could be a threat. And the only reason I have Eagles is second is because Wentz is already hurt. Jalen Rager is already hurt. Deshaun Jackson's still hurt. Their top receiver, Alshon Jeffrey's hurt. So the whole team is already hurt and is not even in the first game. So that's just hard. If they were all healthy, I probably can put them as well. I can probably justify them being the top. But the fact that Wentz is already hurt with an undisclosed injury is already kind of it hurts if someone's an Eagles fan hearing that. And then number 1 is the Cowboys. I won't go much into Jarwin, but I think he's solid. As only having one tight end that hurts, but I think as a pass catcher tight end, I think he's solid. Maybe not as good as a blocker, but I think they have the pieces. I think they have more answers and questions on that team at this point. And we'll see what Mike McCarthy does with them.
But let's go to probably the most exciting division and probably like the toughest decision I had to make. So we got the NFC West, which I put like really exciting offenses for some teams, but really damn good defensive teams. So for fourth, I've got the Los Angeles Rams. I think the best thing we're going to see from this team is probably their new stadium. They brought in Leonard Floyd. They signed back Brockers. They brought in Ashawn Robinson. So they helped their D-line quite a bit. Their secondary is pretty good. Linebackers, meh. But the issue is, for me, like their quarterback. Jared Goff sometimes goes off. Sometimes he only gets like 67 yards in a game, and you never know what to expect from him. They obviously lost one of their receivers, so Brandon Cooks. They're left with Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods. Pretty good weapons, but their tight ends and the overall depth of the team isn't that great. So I have them at fourth, and let's do that there. Third, I have the Arizona Cardinals. I think they're going to win about 9 games. This is actually pretty close. Arizona at 9. I got the Rams at 8. Arizona, obviously, they got DeAndre Hopkins like gifted to them, right? So that's fantastic. I think the receivers need to kind of improve and show themselves, like Christian Kirk, Hakeem Butler, Andy Isabella, but they have so many weapons on offense, and I think that's going to be exciting to watch. Murray, his second year in the league, what can he do? I think he's going to be fun to watch. And obviously they lost David Johnson to the Texans in the trade. I don't think that's a huge loss for them. Kenyon Drake was doing amazing for them, so hopefully he can stay healthy. They also have Chase Edmonds as a backup, so if something happens, they're still good to go. I think in the draft, they also have like one of the biggest steals. They took Isaiah Simmons 8th overall, and this guy can do just about anything on defense, and I'm excited to see him play for them as well. I think overall, if you look at the defense, secondary is really good. They've got Budda Baker. They've got some really good names in linebacker and defensive line. So got them at third with 9 wins. At second, I'm going to put the 49ers here. Obviously, their wide receivers are banged up. Okay, you can raise your eyebrows. We'll see about this. But, I got them at 10 wins, just 1 game off from the Seahawks. But in my mind, your wide receivers are not there. Obviously, this team's run heavy and Kittle's their main weapon, so maybe they can make it work. I don't trust Garoppolo as much as I do Wilson. The defense, let's see if it can be as studly as it's been, and it can win them games. But they added Jordan Reed, another banged up receiver, right? They've tight end, but they brought in Deion Jordan. They brought in Trent Williams to actually boost their offensive line. So that'll be nice for Garoppolo back there. And they have a stable full of running backs. I mean, this team's just stacked with them. So let's see what they do. But overall, I just don't think they can compete with probably one of the most exciting offenses in my mind, which is the Seattle Seahawks. I've got them winning 11 games, so just one more. They've added Jamal Adams, which is great for the secondary. They added Carlos Hyde as backup running back. Bruce Irvin's back in the Seahawks. And they added Greg Olsen. Probably not going to do much, but he's a great leader for the locker room. So I'm interested to see what they do with that. They do have amazing weapons. Lockett's really good. DK Metcalf, probably going to have a breakout year. They have Will Disley. They just have so many offensive weapons. Chris Carson, I'm a big fan of his as well. So with an improving offensive line, I think this team's going to go far. Their defense is actually pretty good too. They have a good D-line, actually amazing linebackers, and a really great secondary. So let's see. And I'm interested to see if Jadeveon Clowney just ends up coming back to the Seahawks since no one's signing him. And if they do that, I think they're booked for the Super Bowl. What do you think about that, Ryan?
Yeah, I think most of it is a toss-up. I think there's a clear delineation between the Rams and the Cardinals and the 49ers and the Seahawks. I think at this point, in a couple of years, I think the Cardinals are in the same picture. I think it's going to come down between I can't really choose between the 49ers and the Seahawks. It's going to be like last year. I think it's going to come down to that head-to-head game, and whoever wins that is going to take. I think they both make the playoffs again because I think they're both that dominant. I think with the Cardinals, you forgot to mention literally their best receiver, Hall of Fame receiver, Larry Fitzgerald. They also have him with Christian Kirk and with DeAndre Hopkins, and then they got Kenny and Drake. Please, that's going to be a great offense. And then I just want to mention Larry Fitzgerald. That's it.
I got you.
Yeah, so this might honestly be the most stacked division in NFL history, going into this year. And I don't think it's like a reach to say there's a chance we might see the first ever 4 playoff division, right? It would, because look, they're playing the NFC East. If the NFC East is like they were last year, they may sweep the division, right? All these teams may end up winning all of their NFC East games. I think this is like a stretch, but it could happen, right? I think that this division is nuts. To me, the 49ers are what I would say is the favorite to win the division, probably at an 11-win team. I'd probably say the Seahawks are a 10 to 11 win team as well. Again, it's one of those, it might come down to the last game like it did last year. The Rams, I don't know what to expect from them, honestly, but they may bounce back. They may have a better year. I think they're probably going to do better than the Cardinals this year if I was going to pick personally. So I would go 9 wins for them and then 8 wins for the Cardinals, which is actually crazy when your worst team in the division's having 8 wins. But yeah, this division is stacked. I would honestly not be surprised if you see 3 playoff teams out of this division.
Yeah, I think so. I'll start off. I think I know that everybody's thought about it, and they put thought into obviously putting the Seahawks ahead of the 49ers. But to me, the 49ers would have won the playoffs in most years, right? Would have won the Super Bowl in most years last year. And they didn't really get worse, right? In fact, they added Trent Williams. Their offensive line is even freakier than it was last year. And I understand what you're saying about, I certainly am not especially sold on Jimmy Garoppolo. But you don't really need to be,
Yeah.
Last year in the playoffs against Super Bowl caliber teams, they basically stopped passing the ball and nearly won the whole damn thing, right? And so they obviously have an elite defense, one of the better defenses in the NFL. I think that, you look at that team, I see this again as being a 12, 13, 14 game winner. Like, I think that they are legitimately that good. Now, with the Seahawks, I think that they're going to be even more revamped on defense, obviously, with Jamal Adams coming in. I mean, that's really what makes this Seahawks defense go, is when they do have safeties that can scream towards the ball, that can play both, back in coverage and also attack at the line of scrimmage. The hope is obviously that Jamal Adams can kind of bring a second level or a second coming of the Legion of Boom, all that sort of stuff. And offensively, obviously, nobody needs to explain how good Russell Wilson is. Nobody needs to explain what Chris Carson did last year. So, like, this is another super elite team, another team, like these might be the two favorites in some ways to make the Super Bowl. Like these are two freaky good teams. I think that I'm going to go Rams third. And look, I love the Cardinals. I love that it took literally 1 year for Cliff Kingsbury to turn the Arizona Cardinals into a 2000s Big 12 team, like just all offense and then just play defense sometimes. But I do think that Isaiah Simmons is going to help a lot. I think that he's going to help a lot on defense. And dude, this offense could be it could be insane, right? Like, we could be talking like Chiefs stuff when we're talking about how good this offense could be. In fact, I think that actually they have more weapons than what the Chiefs have, even if Patrick Mahomes is obviously a better player than Kyler Murray. And what's kind of happened the last couple of years is we have seen sort of this the second, third year quarterback kind of step up and go crazy, right? Like, we saw Patrick Mahomes do it a couple years ago. We saw Lamar Jackson do it last year. To me, it's obvious that Kyler Murray is going to be the next one to do it with what they have on that team, and also just how crazy talented he is. Defensively, again, we're kind of a joke last year, and I think that's going to be a little bit of a work in progress. Whereas I see the Rams as being a little bit more balanced on both sides of the ball. Look, I understand, I don't think that Goff is like an elite quarterback by any means, but he's a really solid player. He's been a guy who's thrown for a lot of yards. I still think that offense is very solid overall. So look, like you said, I mean, I think that not only, I think that all of them could not only compete for 8 wins. I think that teams could compete for 9 wins. I think that they could legitimately have a 4th place team that wins potentially 9 games.
Yeah, we're talking about the Rams, who I think, as the 4th or 3rd seed, still a damn good team. Like, 2 years ago, they kept up with the Chiefs on Monday Night Football, losing 54-51, right? So, Goff has a potential. Maybe this offseason he did some good work and will be more consistent. But, yeah, this whole division is stacked, and they're going to be super fun to watch. And, I had, the lowest team winning 8 games. So, let's see what happens. I think this whole division is going to be super fun to watch. Let's see what happens. We'll see whose predictions are the most right out here. But I think that wraps up the NFC. We'll go to the AFC next time, and we'll definitely have the same conversation. But thanks again for tuning in, and until next time, see ya.